My best friend's ex-mill demands my friend become a submissive wife to her stalker son. This is an ongoing mess with my F29 best friends, F30, X, M29, and now her ex-mill. I have her permission to post this. Now, my bestie never married her ex, but for simplicity's sake, I'll refer to her ex-parents as ex-mill and ex-phil. Bestie and I live together with my parents in a newly bought house. She's pretty much a daughter to my parents, and we are platonic life partners by this point. Her ex ghosted her for 3 years and has been hounding her ever since he found out we bought a house, trying to get her to take him back and live in our house. We've tried reaching to the police, but since nothing serious has happened, we've reached a wall and can only wait. Her ex-in-laws no longer live in the US, but they did come for Thanksgiving. Though my bestie is no longer dating their son, she offered to pick them up at the airport and take them to their hotel. Reason I was told was they would do that for her when she was in college. I didn't like it since her ex is a problem, but she wanted to use the chance to ask her ex-parents to intervene and maybe get him off her back. I still didn't like it, but I figure they probably were okay, based on how she described them. And I was completely wrong. My bestie arrived in tears and with a scratched cheek. Immediately I asked her what happened, and now I'm seeing red. The next part comes from how my bestie described things to me. Bestie told me picking them up went well, and they had talked about the old days. They asked my bestie if they could stop in a nearby restaurant they always liked, and bestie, being her usual self, decided to treat them to lunch. All hell broke loose at the restaurant though. Apparently her ex-mill demanded to know why bestie did not take her abusive stalker ex back. According to ex-mill, my bestie is responsible for her baby boy since she was his first girlfriend, and they were married in the eyes of God. To start, they never legally married. And bestie is an atheist, so, yeah. Bestie tried to defuse the situation, explaining she's moved on with her life after 3 years not knowing where he was. She did try to ask her ex-mill to convince her son to leave her alone, and the bestie just doesn't want him in her life anymore. Ex-phil seemed to agree with her, and apologized for all the heartache and pain she went through. Ex-mill, however, took over the conversation, and began screaming that thanks to my bestie, her son had no life. That apparently my bestie was responsible for her firstborn not having a wife or children. The least she could do is take responsibility, and become the submissive wife he deserved. Ex-phil tried to pull his wife away, more than likely because they were causing a very public scene. Bestie simply say she would not ever consider marriage to her ex. She then said it might be best to take the food to go and for them to go to their hotel. She paid all the food, despite ex-phil offering to cover his and his wife's meal, and drove them to the hotel. At the hotel is where things went from 1 to 100. Ex-mill had spent the whole drive escalating demands. From taking him back, to marrying him, to have a child, and give her son the house as the man in the relationship. Ex-phil apparently kept telling her to stop, but there was no way she could be quiet. Finally my bestie had enough, stopped the car and told ex-mill she will never take a failure of a man like her baby boy as a husband, let alone give birth to his spawn. That she was glad no other woman had stayed long-term with him, since he really won't be a good addition to the gene pool. I gotta admit, I'm proud of her for that last one. Ex-mill went crazy and jumped on my friend. Her husband luckily grabbed her, but she still managed to get my friend on the cheek. She began screaming she was the reason her family had split. Called her with a different word, and said she wished our house burnt with all of us inside. Ex-phil just told my friend to drop their bags on the sidewalk and drive away while he held back his demon of a wife. And bestie did exactly that. Next thing she did was drive back to us. She was not so much hurt by the insults or even the attack, but more the notion that a woman she once saw as a second mother would treat her like this. I told her to just relax a bit, so she's watching some movies with the dogs while I write this and do some work. Tomorrow we are both calling out and just having a girls' day with my mom. I did get in touch with the ex-sister and let her know what happened. She already knew from her dad, and asked me if bestie was pressing charges. She should, but she's not. I tried to convince her, but it's a sore topic for her, so for her emotional well-being I'm not going to push it. The sister said she appreciates we are not pressing charges, and that she will make sure her family doesn't bother us in any way. Apparently she already had her brother moved outside the city. Not sure how or where, but I'm glad he's gone. So, hopefully we are done. We are going to avoid going out too often until we know the ex-monster-in-law is gone from the city. It's not a small city by any means, but I wouldn't put it past these crazes to try to stalk my bestie. Batchmate from university asked me to illustrate something for her wedding invite, presumably for free. I, 23F, graduated from university about 2.5 years ago. While in university, I met this girl, Janice, 24F, through my boyfriend, 24M, who were both batchmates and a year ahead of me. I've never really connected with her on a personal level, always met, spoke to her whenever my boyfriend was around. She was his team lead in a club. She's alright, just wasn't my friend. They both graduated in 2020 and Janice and I sort of lost touch after then. My boyfriend and I both live in a different country now, and we've never heard from or reached out to her, until very recently when we heard from a couple of mutual friends that she's getting married. We both texted her to congratulate her, and that was it. A few weeks ago, Janice reached out to me, and after a few pleasantries, she asked me to ideate something for her wedding invite. A little background about myself: as a hobby, I am a digital illustrator and have done commissions in the past. When she messaged me to help her out with this invite, I was immediately excited about it. It meant a lot to me that someone who just knew me in university wants my work on her wedding invites. Over the last 2 weeks, I have been working on and finalizing the illustration while checking in with her regularly for feedback. I work a full-time corporate job and have other responsibilities beyond my almost 40-hour work week due to being an immigrant in a new country. I messaged Janice a couple of times while working on her illustration to let her know that work had been a little busy and I just needed a solid timeline from her to ensure I plan things accordingly. She messaged me on Wednesday saying, "Babe, we gotta finalize this by Friday." It cut my time in half, but I assumed wedding decisions take time, so I agreed to the new deadline. I finished the illustration before time and sent her a picture of my screen, and not the final file, and haven't heard from her since. A few things to note. I would probably not charged her my usual rate, because I really do appreciate that she thought of me, a small artist, who she just knew, over multiple other illustrators for this project. My boyfriend, however, is pretty annoyed at how she didn't even offer to pay me for the work, given that we are literally just acquaintances, that she's using my skills to get her work done for cheaper, or free in this case, by using the friend card. He mentioned that her texts to me sound like she's my team lead and she's delegating tasks to me like it's my duty. It's definitely my fault for not asking her what she exactly meant when she said ideate, or what her timeline budget was, but I'm starting to feel that I might have been taken advantage of. Update: not an exciting update, but she responded to me after 4 days of the first post and asked me to make a few edits. I simply said, "Sure, I'll look into it. Since we've not discussed this yet, what's your budget for this?" She basically asked me for my fee, and then ghosted me after I told her what I charge. It's been almost 3 weeks since, and I don't think she's going to respond. I don't care anymore, honestly. She doesn't have the illustration file, so she can't use my work unless she decides to respond and pay. Thanks for everyone who responded to the earlier post. I've definitely learned from this and will set clear expectations with rates and timelines before starting a project. Entitled Older Half-Sister Tried to Show Up Unannounced. So you all know my deal with Candy, my entitled, drug-addicted older half-sister. Well, she moved to Texas and is living with her adopted father, aka an ex-family friend, who outed himself to me as an EDP 445. Candy had court the day before Thanksgiving. Basically it was just her giving her plea. She plead not guilty, by the way. She's been claiming a ton of bull, such as "we are a basing nugget, we aren't, he's a hyperactive 2-year-old and often hurts himself," which DHS is already well aware of, and she's even been claiming that me, my mom, and my uncle staged her disgusting house that we cleaned for her ex-landlord. She's also claiming the DHS case is getting moved to Texas, which it is not. I checked. Well, something about me and Nana is that we don't like company over the day before Thanksgiving and Christmas. It's our day to clean and start cooking, and it's a very busy day for both of us. I got a call from Candy's ex-roommate, telling us that Candy was planning on showing up at our house after court, but Candy hadn't said anything to us about it. Well, Candy ended up sending a text to Nana not asking, but telling us she was coming over, and she was trying to bring the EDP with her. I texted her back through Nana's phone, telling her it was a bad day, and that she couldn't just invite herself over. Candy threw a whole fit claiming we were intentionally keeping her son from her. Mind you, Nana was fully aware I was texting Candy. She was telling me what to say. Now, because we have guardianship of Nugget, she is not allowed to just show up at our house. She isn't allowed to let herself in. Nana didn't even want her over. Candy argued with me for over an hour, while simultaneously texting her ex-roommate that the only reason we didn't want her over was because our house was disgusting. I was on FaceTime with the roommate at the same time, and I panned the camera over my house, showing it was not, in fact, disgusting. Candy eventually gave up and never showed up, thank God, but she threw a whole fit about it. She was claiming DHS had told her to come visit, but they were at our house the day before, and would have told us if they told her to come to our house, which they did not. I actually got a call from Candy's caseworker, and she's starting to realize how much Candy lies. It was about her claiming the case was getting moved to Texas. I'm actually really proud of Nana, putting her foot down and maintaining the boundary. Candy was mad because it was the first time Nana told her no. I was preparing for her to show up anyway, and I fully intended on calling the cops. Candy has this thing where she'll show up and demand to be let in, and she'll try to force her way in if she's refused. I won't allow her adopted father into my house, and I won't allow him to be around Nugget. We had all of the doors and windows locked. Luckily she didn't show up for Thanksgiving, either. Oh, and you all will get a kick out of this. Candy was over 2 hours late for court. She expected them to run on her time, not their own. She has the official court date on the 19th of December, where a jury will decide if she's guilty or not. I genuinely hope they do, and so does my entire family. It's about time she faces the consequences of her actions, and her showing up late to court does not look good on her. She's telling everybody that I'm setting her up to fail, but she is honestly setting herself up for it. Hey there! Enjoying these videos? Make sure to like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon too so you don't miss an upload. Sister-in-law decides to strand my son at work. A little background, my SIL is 41 years old and a single mom. Due to her poor judgment in her divorce from her husband, she's back to living in our hometown with her parents instead of the state she and her ex-husband were living in when they separated and then divorced. Their parenting relationship is absolutely non-existent, and former Bill struggles to get her to even let him speak to his son on the phone. She is also currently unemployed and refuses to get a job to help her parents out with expenses of having her and her son living with them. Phil is retired, Mill is about to retire, so they are on a fixed income. My oldest son, 23, is also currently living within their house. Previous living arrangements did not work out, and he didn't want to move back in with my husband and I, but he is employed and pays them their agreed upon rent to cover his living with them. This is a tenuous arrangement at best, as SIL and Mill have a contentious relationship, and my son and SIL do not get along well at all. Now for the story. One evening, my son was at work. He was using Mill's vehicle, as his had broken down on day 3 of his grandparents' vacation, and Mill had given her permission for him to use the car so he could get to and from work without any issues. Public transportation sucks in our city, especially if someone is working until the wee hours of the morning, and it was tentatively agreed that my son and SIL would share the vehicle, since SIL hasn't bothered to maintain car insurance or her vehicle registration on her own car, and Mill and Phil were on a 2-week road trip with their other vehicle. He drove to work as usual, and when he was on his break 4 hours later, he went to go to the car and get something that he had left in it, only to discover the car was gone. Since he's not allowed to have his phone while he's working, he never received the text that SIL sent him an hour after he'd clocked in, saying that she was going to take the car to run errands. Once he checked his phone and saw the message, he called SIL and asked her to pick him up at work. SIL told him that she had no intention of picking him up from work, since he had stranded her at home with no vehicle, and that he could walk. My son called me immediately after he'd hung up on her in tears. By the time he got out of work, it would be around 1 in the morning, and he didn't think he could make the walk since his neuropathy had been flaring up, and he would have difficulty working once he finished his shift. so I told him I'd be there by the time he got out, and relayed the story to my husband, who was very angry at this stunt, the latest in a long line of them. Once I got my son back home, I saw my SIL sitting on the couch, watching TV and not folding the massive pile of clothes next to her. When she asked me what I was doing there, I very nearly punched her, but chose the less violent path, and told her I was bringing my son home from work. Then I asked her if she managed to get all of her errands out of the way. She looked confused for a moment, and then said she hadn't needed to run errands, she had just wanted to go hang out with her friends for a while. She tried to say that she was only joking about making my son walk 7 miles in the middle of the night with neuropathy pains, but I cut her off, and told her that she was a selfish, lazy bee, who had no business hanging out with her friends, since she was unemployed by choice and essentially letting her parents support her. All she could do was stare at me, with a dumbfounded expression on her face. I'm sad to say that she has not changed one little bit since, according to my mill. I hope that my mill sees the light soon, and kicks her mooching out the door. Edit. My SIL took an Uber to my son's workplace to get the car. I was so wrapped up in the storytelling that I forgot to include that detail. Nice. You made it to the end of the video. Make sure to check out the r/EntitledPeople playlist, for more people who haven't been told no ever. That is all. Dank Wizard out.